Up next, we do have Claire Barros, and I just want to go ahead and reshare my screen really quickly because I had an audio issue. So I want to make sure this audio comes through nice and clearly here. So just one moment, I'm going to go ahead and reshare that screen there. And as I said, unfortunately, Claire couldn't be with us today. She's got some teaching stuff that she's attending to, but she did make us a lovely video. So we're going to go ahead and watch that video. Feel free again to post any questions in the chat, in the Q&A, post any questions there, and we'll answer them as we can. All right, so we'll go ahead and we will hear from Claire.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Barros, and I'm the librarian at Davis High School. I'm going to share some information with you today about the databases that we subscribe to as a district at the secondary level. I'm so sorry if you're at the elementary level. These resources are not available to you and your students. Hopefully another presenter this hour, though, did share our other library databases that are available at the elementary level. So as educators, we know that the research process can be complex and it can be a challenge to teach that process to students. I'm here to tell you as a site librarian, though, that I'm here to help support you, and your site librarian is there to help support you at any step along the way that you need. So depending on the level that you teach, you may need to build scaffolds in at every single step. Well, you do not have to do it alone. Your site librarian is a research expert, and we can help support you with whatever you need. I've worked with teachers who'd like my help throughout the entire process, right? Helping their students decide on a topic all the way through the actual presentation of the research. Whereas most teachers come in for steps 3 and 4. They'd like their students to find some sources, they'd like their students to vet some sources, and they want some assistance with that. And your librarian is your expert in that area. So reasons to use a library database. Well, number one, it's accessible to everyone, and we subscribe to it as a district. There's no pesky paywalls or anything. You can be sure that the database will have reliable resources that contain traceable sources. Everything's been vetted. It's also curated in a way that the open web simply just isn't, right? The open web can be overwhelming for students if they go to Google just to start some general research. Sure, they can find some really good stuff, but of course, as we all know, what they'll find mostly is not applicable to the task at hand. So it's curated, the library database, and it can help focus students. Finally, the biggest reason why I think we encourage students to use the library database is because of its ease of use. It has tools built in that really help support students in this research process. So as a district, we subscribe to 3 of the Gale databases: eBooks, Gale in Context, and Opposing Viewpoints. Now, I do want to mention that other sites may subscribe to other databases, such as Science in Context and Literature in Context. Please reach out to your site librarian for more information about what's available at your school. So eBooks is first. This is basically like an extension of the print library. So this is going to have reference materials such as encyclopedias, law resources, as you can see here. Something that's exciting that will be starting in fall for all of the high schools. Your high school may already have it. Is Cameron's collection, which is a social emotional collection full of resources for students that deal with a plethora of issues ranging, from anxiety and stress to dealing with your parents' divorce. So that's Gale eBooks. Opposing Viewpoints is our more specialized database. So this database focuses on topics that have more than one viewpoint. So it's a great database to send students to if you're having them engage in a debate or write an argumentative essay. Gale in Context, also known as Research in Context and High School in Context, this is the database that's our general database. Here you'll find a range of topics. It's not as specialized as Opposing Viewpoints, so anything and everything you're looking for can be found in Research in Context, and that's the one I'm going to demo for you in just a minute. So like I mentioned earlier, a big reason why we encourage students to use the library database is the ease of use. And the big reason why it's so easy to use is because there's all these amazing tools that Gale has built in that I'm going to demo for you, including sign into Google and accessibility features like language translation and text-to-speech. So how do we locate these resources? Many sites have the database links on the app portal. However, the best place to go and find your site-specific database links will be your site's library website. So check with your site librarian to see where they house their links. I've also provided them at the end of this, the slides that will be shared with you. You have access to them there as well. So this is the Davis High School Library webpage, and you'll see that I have icons for all of the different databases, the 3 that I just talked to you about, the Gale ones, as well as the other databases that are available at our site. Towards the bottom here, you'll notice that I include login information if you're off campus. So if you're on campus, you're IP authenticated, you're automatically logged into Gale when you're on campus. If you're off campus, due to our licensing agreement with Gale, you need to use a remote password. And those passwords can be found on the library websites of your school. So we're going to look at Research in Context, High School in Context. This is the home page of Gale in Context. Towards the top left here, you'll see the site that you're currently logged into. Towards the right here, you'll see that you have options to sign in with Google and Microsoft. I've signed in with Google. You have an option up here at the top to change the language interface. You can also translate the articles, and I'll show you that in a minute. The basic search bar is here, although you also have access to advanced search. And advanced search, you'll have a plethora of different options to narrow down your results depending on what you and your students need. So we have our and or search terms here. You can narrow down your results to the type of document or the type of content available. And maybe most importantly to mention to you teachers is that you can also narrow your search results by Lexile. So if you are looking for resources for your students, this may be a good way to help find sources that are accessible to your students' reading level. So if you go back to the home page here, I want to point out a couple other elements. The carousel is constantly being updated depending on what's going on and what's current. So that is always changing. Below the carousel, we have our topics, of which there are over 1,000. And there are more than 1,000 subjects covered in the database, but Gale Research in Context is over 1,000 topic pages, which just means that there's an overview page. And actually, we can take a look at one together here. So if I select George Washington, it will take us to the overview page for George Washington. We'll see an image, a kind of summary, a blurb, and some quick facts, as well as a breakdown of what's on this page. So Gale automatically, whenever you perform a search, organizes the results based on the type of document. So we have reference, texts, we have biographies, we have primary sources, we have videos, images, we have audio, as well as our traditional magazine and news articles. So if I were to select one of these, I'm going to go up to the featured content. This is content that Gale has specifically highlighted. I'm going to choose an article here from NPR, Separating Man from Myth, so you can see what an article looks like. So from this page, there's a few different features that I'd like to point out. First is accessibility. So if your students prefer to read in a language other than English, they can translate this article into over 40 different languages. As I showed you earlier, they can also always change the interface of the database as well. So when you translate the article, will just be the content of the article that's translated, not the additional interface that's surrounding it. So your students have the option to change both. So maybe you have a student who's more comfortable navigating in Spanish, but you'd like them to practice, reading and accessing the articles in English, so they can actually do that. You can have it set in both ways. In addition to the translation, you also have the ability to increase your font size, and you can also listen to the text as well. If you just select listen from here, it'll read from the top, from the title, or you can actually highlight the paragraph that you'd like to listen to and then select listen. It's a fairly robotic voice. It's not anything that's incredibly human sounding, but it is another tool that can help students who are maybe more auditory learners. Because I've signed in with Google, I can also share this article. I can send it to my Google Drive. If I signed in with Microsoft, I could send it to my OneDrive. Can also email it, download it, print it. If I'm looking for articles about this same topic, I actually have some related articles here for me. As I scroll down through or past the article here, I have our citation tool, all the different APA, MLA that you'd maybe need. You can export the citation. And then again, at the bottom, you're able to review related articles. So the great thing about Gale is that once you find one article that will work for your research project or paper, you'll most likely be pointed to another article that can help further your research and learning. One more thing I'd like to highlight is the Highlight and Notes tool. So I'm going to decrease the font size a little bit. And it depends on how you have students, of course, conduct their research, but this highlight tool can really be utilized in a few different ways. If you'd like your students to go through and maybe you want them to find vocabulary terms, you could have them highlight them in a specific color. If you want them to go through and you need them to find quotes, they can be highlighted another color. Of course, the colors don't always have to matter, but I will show you why in just a minute. So students just select the text that they'd like, oh, this is a very important part, let me highlight that. They can even annotate that note if they needed to, if they accidentally selected something that they'd like to get rid of. They can also do that by clicking on the highlight and then the trash can and delete again. So once you have kind of a collection of highlights here, go back up to the top and click Highlights and Notes, and then View All. And it will actually compile all of the different highlights and notes that you've taken across different articles, and it will collect them here. It's actually given me the title of the article that I took my notes from, the notes, and it even started a bibliography for me. So this is maybe a tool that you can have students use when they're conducting their research. They can highlight as they go, not worrying that they'll forget which article it came from. Gale keeps track of that for you. There's so much more to explore for Gale, but this is really, all the time that I have with you today. Do want to highlight the educator resources at the bottom here. There's one for each of the databases that Gale has. Not for eBooks, but for the other databases. So I've actually linked the two here on the slides for you. Check with your site librarian. If your site subscribes to other databases, there may be resources for those as well. But of course, your most valuable resource is going to be your site librarian. Please reach out to us. We are here to help support you and your students. Whether it's with your research project or anything else that's relating to literacy, we're here for you. Thank you.
All right. Again, thank you to Claire for recording that for us. It's a shame she couldn't be here, but as you can see, she shared, we have quite a few databases available in the district to our students. And as you can see, she kind of did a deep dive on Gale, and I imagine all the other databases are just as deep. So definitely reach out to your local librarian at your school site, see what databases you have access to. The librarians are listed here on the slides. You will again be getting a copy of these slide decks.